Man, I'm glad that Lupita Nyong'o started this movie with a promo telling everybody to shut the hell up, because this is probably the best behaved I've seen an audience in a long time. I just got back from seeing Quiet Place Day 1. This is the prequel to the first two, takes place in the city, pretty much entirely different cast except for Digimon Hansu, who was in the second movie. And this is actually kind of a weird watch for me because I saw this movie in December. I saw it at a test screening. I saw a different version of this movie, which actually played a good bit differently than the one that I just saw today. And that's also meant that I've had a lot of time to stew on this movie. I obviously wasn't allowed to talk about it. They took my picture, made me sign an NDA, so I couldn't say anything about it. But now I can finally talk about it because I felt on the outside of the conversation ever since because of that. So let's get into it. Now, kind of a background on how I feel about this franchise. I'm perfectly primed for this. I love the first two movies. I think they're very good, very suspenseful. They're really the only PG-13 horror movies that actually get me to invest in the scares, and they're able to actually hold my suspense a good bit, and that's pretty unique. And as an extension of that, this is a great continuation and companion piece to this franchise. And you know, I don't like to be hyperbolic, but like I said, I've had a good amount of time to stew on this movie. I think this may be the best horror prequel of all time. Granted, you know, I can't think of a ton of really great ones. Funny thing is, we've actually now, after The First Omen, have two very good horror prequels this year. But other than that, what do we got? The Texas Chainsaw Massacre prequels. I guess some of the Insidious movies would be considered prequels, but they're more like just sequels where they wrote themselves into a corner by killing Elise, so they just have to go back. It's just kind of rare that you get a horror prequel and it ends up being good, nonetheless as damn good as this. But back to Quiet Place, you know, this movie really strikes a balance. Although it's a pretty hopeless and at times very depressing movie, it doesn't really overdo it, which it could have easily. Honestly, the cut that I saw back in December almost teetered on too hopeless, but it really pulls off that aspect of having hope and retaining that hope in a very overwhelming, desperate situation. It does that really well, and along with the characters, you feel those emotions when they have these small moments of comfort and relief in what is otherwise just a very hellish and nightmarish situation. Lupita Nyong'o's character, Sammy, is the big emotional pull of this movie. She's honestly what I really got invested in this movie, and it's that same thing of, despite the hopeless situation that she's in, despite how she feels because she starts this movie out in a very dark place, she finds the smallest of human comforts throughout the movie to be those things that really pull her back to earth and make her whole again. I've spoken about characters before where I feel like they have the potential to be moody or annoying. Sometimes characters that are kind of brooding, stuff like that, comes off as whiny, just too much. But I think that she plays it very well. I think she plays it in a very interesting way where you buy into the hopelessness, but they don't lay it on too thick. She very much feels like an actual human being. And then on the other end of that, her co-star Joseph Quinn. I believe that this is the first time that I've seen him actually in anything. I know that he's in Stranger Things, but I don't really watch that. I know that he's going to be in the new Fantastic Four as Human Torch, but I think that this movie really sold me on his acting ability. Although his character kind of annoyed me a bit at first, he comes to be a lot more endearing throughout the movie. This is another situation where if he was characterized differently or characterized as being detrimental to the survival of the characters, he could have been insufferable and annoying. But he too also has these very human emotions, enduring qualities, and also shows a good amount of bravery throughout the movie that wins you back into his corner and ultimately feel like, yes, this is someone that I want to root for. He also contrasts Lupita Nyong'o's Sammy really well. They both just work so well in tandem with each other. I think that they complement each other in a lot of ways, that they're very different, but because of the way that they are, the broken nature of these characters, their relationship is extremely compelling and honestly very sweet in a platonic way. I know I'm talking about the characters a lot, and that's not to say that there isn't some great Quiet Place action in this movie. It has all the stuff that you expect from one of these movies, the sequences, the chases, the scenes where they find new ways to make you cringe at certain items you wouldn't normally think about, certain actions that you wouldn't think about. They find all those ways to make you hold your breath when you're in the movie theater. My audience was dead quiet. It was honestly a huge relief because the last few horror movies I've gone to, there's always been a guy on his phone or something going on like that. But they pull it off, and you know, that's something that a franchise like this, with the nature of the creatures, there's kind of just a limiting amount of things sometimes that you can do with these. So they have to get more inventive and, of course, you know, find new ways to make them interesting or make them scary, or at the very least just find new ways that you can attract them with sound, find new ways to raise the tension with sound, and ways for the humans to outsmart them. And I don't mean that as a diss with the limiting factor comment. This actually is one of the few franchises that I feel like, especially in the genre of horror, lends itself best to spin-offs, because this was a worldwide invasion. You could make a movie about any set of characters in any location, you could do it anywhere, and I'm sure that you could find something new and interesting to tell in that universe. But despite all that, it's really the characters in the movie that make me gravitate towards it, because this movie is mainly about the ideas of death, acceptance. As depressing as it can be, I found it to be really powerful. Although the scale is larger with the cities, the more people and all of that, it is a bit of a slower story because the stakes of the characters, you know, they're personal, they're small scale, they're motivated by survival, trying to understand what's going on, and just kind of the simple comforts in life that you take for granted every day, that in a situation like this mean the world to you. And I just appreciate that this movie is a movie about two people connecting. It just happens to be in the context of an alien invasion where you have to survive and not make a sound. But all things considered, it could be a very subdued movie. It's actually kind of understated because despite all the shit going on, all the monsters, all the action, all that good stuff you expect from this franchise, it's not like it feels like an afterthought, but it just feels like the movie is more interested in telling the story of these characters and their connection. And I'm glad, because I think that it would have been just a little bit basic. I don't think that this movie would be as good if it was just a group of random people trying to get from point A to point B, no motivation, no human emotions or anything like that, just a simple thriller where they make the monsters pop up if they make a sound. This movie is not that movie, but I think what it does in replacement of being that all the time on the nose thriller is something that has those aspects but is more interested in character. And you could tell that in the way that this was directed by Michael Sarnowski. It feels like it was directed by an indie director. And what it is, it's just mainly the sensibilities of the direction and the point of focus throughout the movie that makes me say that. And it's definitely not any kind of negative, because overall, I think that's a good thing. I think that that's what grounds the movie and just gets an emotional reaction out of people. Besides that, of course, the cat, greatest character in the movie. Let's face it, I'm a big cat guy, so obviously I have an emotional attachment to cats. And anytime the cat's in danger, runs off, something happens, you're on the edge of your seat. But overall, I think this all just stacked up to be an amazing Quiet Place movie, an amazing horror prequel, if not probably the best horror prequel I can think of at the moment. And I highly recommend going out and seeing it. There's a lot to love here, a lot to attach to. Like I said, just all the classic Quiet Place stuff that you come to expect, all that creature feature stuff, and it's all very good, but at the center of it, it's a very human story. And that's what I ended up really attaching to. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this movie. If you've seen it, this franchise, are you excited to see it? I'd love to hear. I'm GM Light. Have a good one.